the antics of Elon Musk's adorable son X in the Oval Office were charming, but the boy's mom was not amused.
X, are you okay? This is X, and he's a great guy, high IQ.
The stage was set, and the energy in the air was electric. All eyes were on the stage as Elon Musk prepared to step into the spotlight.
3, 2, 1.
Tonight, the ingenuity of man, making the stars seem just a little closer.
We have liftoff.
The most ambitious SpaceX uncrewed mission yet, Starship.
This wasn't just any event. It was one of the most highly anticipated live moments of the year. The world was watching, with cameras broadcasting every second to millions across the globe. The backdrop, adorned with American flags, made the scene even more powerful. Tech leaders, journalists, and everyday dreamers sat in the audience, each eager to hear what he had to say. They knew this night would be unforgettable, but not for the reason they expected. Among the sea of faces, a surprising sight stood out. Seated in the very first row was Grimes, holding their 4-year-old son, XA12. Their presence hadn't been announced, and whispers rippled through the crowd as people took notice. The child, full of boundless energy, wiggled in his mother's lap, his bright eyes darting between the dazzling stage lights and the imposing figure of his father. He was fascinated, his tiny fingers gripping onto Grimes as he tried to get a better look. Then, the moment arrived. Elon Musk stepped forward, greeted by thunderous applause. He stood with his usual composed demeanor, taking a deep breath before speaking. His voice, steady and measured, filled the space. "Thank you for joining us tonight," he began, his words carrying far beyond the walls of the venue. "Tonight, we explore an idea that could redefine our future, one that challenges everything we believe is possible." The crowd was transfixed. Every word seemed to pull them deeper into the moment, as they waited for what would come next. But while most of the audience remained spellbound, one person wasn't as interested in sitting still: young XAE12. Fidgeting in his mother's lap, he tugged at her sleeve, pointing insistently at the stage. His small voice could barely be heard over the echoes of his father's speech, but his determination was clear.
Little X totally stole the show while sitting on his dad's lap as Elon talked about going to space.
Grimes leaned down, whispering something in response, her expression caught somewhere between amusement and caution. She knew her son well. When he had an idea in his head, it was difficult to stop him. Meanwhile, Elon continued speaking, unfazed by the movement in the audience. The camera, however, momentarily cut away from him, zooming in on his son. Viewers at home caught a glimpse of the little boy's face, eyes locked on his father, lips slightly parted in curiosity. Something was on his mind, and it was only a matter of time before he acted on it. A mic drop moment. As XAEA12 wriggled free from his mother's grasp, the audience let out a soft chuckle. But what started as quiet amusement quickly turned into a collective gasp. Without hesitation, the 4-year-old stood up and made his way toward the stage. Elon caught the movement out of the corner of his eye, pausing for a split second. The room seemed to hold its breath as XAA12 continued his determined march. Then, in an instant, the unexpected happened. The child reached up and grabbed the microphone right out of his father's hand, live on television. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. The only sound in the room was the faint hum of the live broadcast feed. All eyes were now locked on the tiny figure standing at the center of the stage, microphone in hand. He wasn't intimidated by the cameras, the audience, or the significance of the moment. He held the mic firmly, his small fingers wrapped tightly around it. Grimes, still in her seat, half stood, her hand hovering in midair. It was as if she wanted to call him back, but knew it was too late. The audience shifted nervously. Was this an adorable, unscripted moment, or a complete disruption of the event? Then a ripple of laughter spread through the crowd as people realized what had just happened. Elon, ever the showman, quickly recovered.
Then, as Musk and Trump talked to the media, the toddler was seen having some fun in the Oval Office, holding on to his dad's leg, sitting on his shoulders, and even hiding behind the president's desk.
"Looks like we have a new speaker tonight," he quipped, stepping to the side. His voice carried a touch of humor, but his glance toward Grimes suggested a flicker of uncertainty. This wasn't part of the plan. Now standing alone under the stage lights, XAA-12 clutched the microphone in both hands. The sheer size of the stage dwarfed his small frame, making the moment feel even more surreal. The audience sat in suspense, waiting to hear what he would say. For a brief moment, he simply looked out at the sea of faces before him. Then, with surprising clarity, he spoke. "Daddy says robots will take over the world." The words landed like a thunderclap. The crowd froze. No one knew how to react. Should they laugh, be concerned, or sit in stunned silence? A few nervous chuckles escaped, but most people remained speechless. Elon's usually unshakable composure wavered, his eyes widening ever so slightly. This was not what he had expected. He opened his mouth as if to respond, but hesitated. In the front row, Grimes had both hands over her mouth, her eyes wide with a mixture of shock and amusement. No one knew what would happen next, but one thing was certain. This moment would be replayed across the internet for years to come. Grimes's wide eyes darted between her son and Elon. The atmosphere in the room had shifted. What had started as an innocent, playful moment now carried an unexpected weight. XAEA-12 remained on stage, gripping the microphone, his tiny frame unshaken by the tidal wave of reactions rippling through the audience. He wasn't nervous. He wasn't second-guessing himself. He simply stood there, waiting for a response, completely unaware of the shock he had just sent through the room. Silence stretched across the venue, thick and unbroken. His words lingered in the air, repeating in everyone's minds. "Daddy says robots will take over the world." It wasn't just the statement itself, it was the way he said it. His voice was clear, steady, and matter-of-fact, carrying the kind of innocent certainty only a child could have when delivering something so profound. There was no hesitation, no sense of humor or exaggeration. To him, it was simply the truth. For the first time that night, Elon Musk, known for his quick wit and ability to command any room, seemed momentarily unsure of what to do. His usual composure faltered as he locked eyes with his son, processing the weight of the moment. Grimes remained frozen in her seat, hands clasped together as if she was willing the moment to pass.
Grimes wrote about the 4-year-old on February 11th on X in response to a fan praising her son for being very polite and her over her parenting of him. "He should not be in public like this. I did not see this. Thank you for alerting me, but I'm glad he was polite. Sigh."
Her lips were slightly parted, but no words came out. It was clear she hadn't expected this, and neither had anyone else. The audience was split in their reactions. Some exchanged uneasy glances, trying to gauge whether this was a joke or a rare, unfiltered insight into the mind of one of the world's most visionary thinkers. Others remained motionless, almost as if they were waiting for Elon to confirm or deny what had just been said. Then, a ripple of nervous laughter broke the silence. A few chuckles spread through the room, but they were hesitant, uncertain whether this was truly funny or if they had just witnessed something far more unsettling. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Elon took a step forward, his hands raised slightly, a familiar gesture he often used to settle a room. His expression was still unreadable, but the flicker of amusement in his eyes suggested he was ready to regain control of the moment. "Well," he said, pausing just long enough to keep the suspense hanging in the air. The entire room leaned in, waiting for his response. What would he say? Would he brush it off as a child's innocent remark? Would he dive into a philosophical debate? Or would he confirm the very thing everyone was now secretly wondering? Was his son right? A moment bigger than the event. Elon finally spoke, but his voice carried a nervous edge. "That's one way to phrase it," he said with an uneasy chuckle. The audience laughed, but it wasn't the full-hearted kind. It was thin, laced with tension. People were still trying to process what had just happened. But XAEA-12 wasn't finished. Adjusting his grip on the microphone, he scanned the crowd, as if gauging their reaction. Then, with the same innocent confidence, he added, "Daddy says I might make robots when I grow up." His words, though spoken with the simplicity of a child, sent another ripple through the room. The murmurs returned, and this time, they were louder.
Yeah, not only was Elon's son there, he actually climbed onto his dad's shoulders at one point. It was pretty cute.
Elon moved quickly, Placing a gentle hand on his son's shoulder, he forced a smile. "That's some big ambition right there," he said, his voice light but firm. "But let's save the world-changing speeches for a few more years, okay?" He reached for the microphone, but XAE-12 hesitated. His small fingers tightened around it for just a moment before finally letting go. Meanwhile, Grimes had made her way to the edge of the stage, motioning for her son to return to her. But instead of immediately going, he turned to look up at Elon, his face filled with a mix of pride and determination. "You said it," he murmured, his voice just loud enough for the microphones to pick up. Elon, visibly flustered, gave a small nod before gently guiding his son back toward Grimes. That's when the applause erupted. Not for the technology, not for the groundbreaking ideas they had expected to hear tonight, but for a moment so raw, so unexpected, that it would be talked about long after the event ended. Elon stood motionless for a beat, watching as his son handed over the mic and walked toward Grimes. The cheers grew louder, but beneath the noise there was something else, an unmistakable air of unease. The crowd wasn't just applauding out of amusement. They were trying to make sense of what they had just witnessed. Were the child's words simply an innocent repetition of things he had overheard? Or had they just gotten an unfiltered glimpse into the mind of one of the most influential thinkers of their time? As XAEA-12 reached his mother, she knelt down and pulled him into a tight embrace. Her face, still tinged with disbelief, softened for a moment as she whispered something to him. The cameras caught her glancing up at Elon, her expression unreadable but heavy with an unspoken question. What now? Elon stepped forward again, reclaiming his spot behind the podium, but something had shifted. The confidence that usually defined him seemed slightly rattled. He gripped the edges of the podium, his knuckles turning pale. Then, after a brief pause, he let out a faint, almost forced laugh. "Well," he said, his voice slightly strained, "you never know what's going to happen at a live event." The audience laughed politely, but the weight of the moment still hung in the air. No one would forget what just happened. Not tonight, and maybe not for a long time. A child's words, a world's questions. Elon took a deep breath, determined to steer the moment back on course. His voice was steady but carried a hint of amusement. What my son just shared, while a little ahead of his time, does speak to the kind of ambition we hope to inspire in future generations.
You do things that are useful to your fellow human beings, to the world. It's very hard to be useful. Very hard. Are you contributing more than you consume?
A few chuckles rippled through the audience, but the room still held a lingering tension. Elon pressed on, trying to lighten the mood. Big ideas, bold visions, and maybe even a little mischief along the way. This time, the laughter was more genuine. The tension wasn't entirely gone, but it had softened. Grimes, now seated again with XAE-12 back in her lap, let out a quiet breath, her posture relaxing slightly. She gently smoothed down her son's hair, though her eyes flickered with caution, as if bracing for another surprise. X, on the other hand, seemed completely unfazed by the commotion he had caused. He fidgeted with a small toy he had pulled from his pocket, already appearing to have moved on from the moment. Elon, too, seemed to find his rhythm again, easing back into the speech he had come to deliver. Yet, despite his regained composure, he couldn't help but glance toward his son and Grimes every so often. It was as if some part of him was still anticipating another curveball. For the audience, and likely the millions watching at home, the focus of the event had already shifted. The groundbreaking innovation Elon had planned to unveil had taken a back seat to something far more compelling. The unfiltered, unscripted words of a 4-year-old and the ripple effect they had caused. Because now, a question loomed over the room. Was XAEA-12's statement just an innocent remark? A child repeating something he had heard his father say? Or was it a glimpse into something far bigger? A future that Elon Musk himself wasn't quite ready to reveal? The weight of that question still hung in the air when, just as Elon began regaining control of the room, XAE-12 leaned closer to Grimes and whispered something. She shook her head slightly, clearly hoping to prevent any further interruptions. But her son had other plans. Without warning, he wriggled free from her arms once more and made his way back toward the edge of the stage. This time, The audience didn't chuckle. They didn't murmur. They didn't even shift in their seats. Instead, they fell completely silent, the air thick with anticipation. Grimes looked mortified, her hand hovering in the air as if she might reach for him. But she hesitated. Perhaps she knew it was already too late. Standing at the edge of the stage, unbothered by the hundreds of eyes locked on him, XA12 called out, his voice small but unwavering. "Daddy said I'll build really smart robots soon." The words, simple and innocent on their own, hit like a second shockwave. The momentary lightheartedness from before was gone. Scattered nervous laughter echoed through the hall, but most people didn't react at all. They were too stunned, too caught in the weight of the words that had just been spoken. On stage, Elon Musk froze mid-sentence. He turned to his son, his expression unreadable. But for the briefest moment, his face softened. A flicker of something, pride, amusement, or perhaps something deeper, crossed his features. Then, his lips curved into the faintest smile. "You're not wrong," Elon finally said.
Elon Musk is showing his youngest son, XA12, all about the family business. The 51-year-old SpaceX founder was spotted at the MMA Global Possible Conference in Miami, Florida on Tuesday.
Elon's tone was light, but his words carried a deliberate weight. "I guess we know who's taking over when I retire." The crowd erupted into laughter and applause, the tension from earlier breaking like a wave. Elon smiled, walking toward his son and effortlessly scooping him up, unbothered by the spectacle he had created. As Elon carried him back to Grimes, he turned to the audience with a wink. "Now," he said, adjusting his grip on the mic, "let's get back to tonight's big ideas before my 4-year-old decides to unveil them all." Laughter rippled through the room again, but this time, it carried a different energy. It was no longer just amusement. It was fascination. The entire night had taken an unexpected turn, and the audience, whether they realized it or not, was no longer focused on the futuristic technology Elon had come to unveil. Instead, they were captivated by a brief but powerful moment, one that was raw, unscripted, and strangely thought-provoking. Even as Elon continued with his presentation, there was an undeniable shift in the atmosphere. His words flowed smoothly, his signature confidence returning, but something was different. Every so often, his eyes darted toward Grimes and XAE12, as if he were bracing himself for another unexpected interruption. The audience, too, remained on edge, not with impatience, but with a quiet curiosity. No matter how groundbreaking Elon's presentation was, there was no denying it. The real story of the night had already unfolded. A quiet moment backstage. When the event finally came to a close, the Musk family slipped away from the spotlight, finding a quiet corner backstage away from the cameras and flashing lights. The energy of the room still buzzed in the background, but here, in this small moment, it was just the three of them. Elon sat beside Grimes, who held XAE12 in her lap. Unlike his parents, who were clearly still processing the unexpected turn of events, the little boy was completely unfazed. He played absent-mindedly with a small toy he had tucked into his pocket earlier in the evening, as if nothing unusual had happened. Grimes was the first to break the silence. "Well, that wasn't exactly how I pictured tonight going," she said, shaking her head. Her voice carried a mix of disbelief and amusement, but there was also something else, a lingering curiosity. Elon let out a low chuckle, leaning back in his chair. "He's got good instincts," he admitted, though a faint tension in his voice suggested he was still turning the moment over in his mind. He exhaled, running a hand through his hair. "Maybe a little too good?" Grimes raised an eyebrow. "You told him he might build robots someday?" Elon hesitated before shrugging. "We've had a few talks. I didn't think he'd make his debut announcement on live TV, though." They both laughed quietly, exchanging glances before looking back at XAE12. The boy remained completely absorbed in his own world, swinging his legs as he played with his toy. After a pause, Elon leaned forward, placing a hand on his son's shoulder. His voice softened, carrying a warmth that wasn't often seen in public. "You know," he said with a smirk, You might have stolen the show tonight, but next time maybe give me a little heads up. XAEA-12 looked up at his father and grinned, his innocent smile completely unaware of the waves his words had sent across the world. Grimes shook her head, still trying to process everything. You do realize people are going to be talking about this for a long time, right? Elon sighed, stretching his arms behind his head. Yeah, he admitted. I figured as much. But even as he said it, there was something in his expression, something almost unreadable. Was it pride, amusement, or was there a flicker of something else, something deeper? As the night wound down, the Musk family shared a rare, quiet moment together, but even they knew this wasn't just another viral moment that would disappear in a few days. It would be replayed, analyzed, and speculated upon for years to come. And with that, one final question remained. Was XAEA-12's statement just innocent, childlike curiosity? Or did he unknowingly hint at something Elon Musk hasn't told the world yet? If you have liked that video, subscribe our channel to get more insightful video.